Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a politics, voting, and democracy reporter for the New York Times and home for the Campaign Food Report. This book doesn't have anything to do with any of the above, but about the famous nightclub in New Jersey in I Don't Want to Go Home, the oral history of the Stone Pony. We welcome Nick Corasaniti.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nick, let's go beyond the mic. How did Asbury Park's resurgence compare to the consistency of the Stone Pony after all these years?
So I've always said that the Stone Pony's history and Asbury Park's history are not a mirror of each other by any means, but they're deeply intertwined. It's, this music club that's kind of been this city that's had so many ups and downs, beating heart, and sometimes it's needed, a real shock to get back to life. But, the Asbury Park really became a music town. It's always been a music town, but it became this kind of dependent on music town. And throughout the late 70s into the 80s, as Asbury was continuing to suffer from economic distress, flight and all sorts of problems that would cause people to not even want to come into town except to see music at the Stone Pony. And so, even when it was going down, the Pony was able to, kind of float above it until it just became too strong and it dragged it down. And the Pony actually did close twice, once in 1991 for about 6 months, and from 1998 to 2000.
What does the Stone Pony mean as a cornerstone of your own life?
So I started going there, not in like the, the Springsteen era, obviously, but for punk music. And so I grew up in the New Jersey punk scene, which was, very, very vibrant, would give the world so many huge punk bands like the Bouncing Souls and Gaslight Anthem and My Chemical Romance and, members of Less Than Jake and all sorts of bands across genres, the Streetlight Manifesto. And the Pony was kind of our big stage that, it was either going to New York City, go to Philadelphia, or see nothing. And so finally, when the Pony presented itself to, host the Warped Tour in its lot behind it, to start having bands like Less Than Jake. I remember a show where Blink-182 was coming up and Less Than Jake was still headlining above them. It was the place that we could go see that. And at least until Starline Ballroom opened up. So my bond with it started that way, but it still always had this kind of like, it carried the spirit of spontaneity and guests and, unpredictability that it established with Springsteen and Southside and Stevie Van Zandt in the 70s, even with the punk scene then, right? Like you could be going to see the Bouncing Souls and then, Frank from My Chem shows up for 2 songs. And you don't get that in a lot of places.
You've said in interviews you started going to the Stone Pony in the 90s, but you started college in Ithaca at 2004. What was the best punk rock show you saw at the Pony? And what was the name of your fake ID?
Well, as Tony Palagrosi explains in the book, he was the first one to, go before. He just kind of made it happen. There was never a law passed. He said, hey, it's 18 to enter, 21 to drink, because that's what happens at other places. And we're a venue now. We're not a bar. And he never went and formally changed anything. He just said it, right? And the town was like, okay. And so it was an interesting thing. A lot of the outside shows you could get into, even if you weren't 18, not necessarily with a fake ID. So that's how I got into Warped Tour with my dad. That was, kind of come one, come all. I'm not sure if I would recommend that, when you're 12 or 13 years old and Henry Rollins comes on stage and you were thinking you were seeing the Alkaline Trio. And both my dad and I had to, run to the back. I'd say the best punk show I ever saw in there, I mean, in that, late 90s to, I guess, before I went to college show was probably either Less Than Jake or Catch 22. It ended up being the last Catch show before, they would kind of split and Thomas would go on to do Streetlight. But it was just, they had this energy of finally making it there, of kind of always playing in battles of the bands and scraping and trying to get up. And then when they finally were the headliner, it felt like something to all of us who had seen them in church basements everywhere else.
And it could have all disappeared if one of the bikers could have gotten a clean shot at the owner.
It's one of the craziest stories in the book, right? The animosity between the bikers and the Pony owners in the late 70s and 80s. I mean, Jack, says at one time he was up on the roof with AKs and grenades and everything. And he's like, I knew I was going to die, but I was going to take down as many bikers as I could with me.
Nick Corasaniti joined us beyond the mic for The Rocking Eight. He is the author of I Don't Want to Go Home, the oral history of the Stone Pony. Nick, Nick, all this is 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no pressure.
Okay.
Most underrated Bruce Springsteen song of all time?
Darlington County.
How long did it take you to write the book?
4 years.
What was your best memory at the United Nations?
Putting our logo on this light that was, affixed to, I guess, for lack of a better word, the side of the building. So the entire New York skyline, where the UN building was, you could see our logo for the program we were working on then.
How many Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuits have you had in one sitting?
In one sitting? Probably more than 5, as embarrassing to say that.
So where's the most underappreciated place to eat in Asbury Park?
Underappreciated. Mogo Tacos.
Time for the hardest question known to man. It's yes, no, or maybe. The New York City congestion pricing program was doomed to fail from the beginning. Yes, no, or maybe.
Oh, definitely maybe.
Which rock and roller needs to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame next?
Warren Zevon.
Amen to that. Thank you. So what's the most shocking moment of your life?
My entire life?
Yeah.
Actually writing a book.
Why?
It's something you always think about, but it's really hard. So much goes into writing a book, right? Like I said, this was 4 years. To have the desire to finish it, it's the ultimate, like, oh, I started this thing, but am I going to finish it? And I know so many people who couldn't. And I thought I might probably be one of those, right? And getting this through the door even shocked me.
We'll sneak in one more with Nick Corasaniti, and he joins us beyond the mic. Nick, what was the one special memory you will take and share with anyone who asks about the Stone Pony?
It's the idea that Bruce might show up, and he actually does. So when we took my dad for his birthday to a Southside Johnny show in 2019, and we saw Gary Talent and his band were opening. And so it's like, it's a pretty good sign. Bruce will show up. And you might think that, like, yeah, that was a good sign in, 1982, but in 2019, like, that's not going to happen. And yet he did. And he ended up playing for like 45 minutes. And you could see how him and Southside, who grew up together, right? These are people who have known each other now for like 60 years. Just the familiarity on stage and how they interact and how they know certain things about each other. And, you really don't find that in other places with a lot of other musicians. And it's what makes him unique, and it's what makes the Pony really special.
Nick, it's time for one big question. How do you explain in less than 25 words the impact of the Stone Pony and those good ghosts to someone who's never been there before?
Journalists who stuck to 25 words. I mean, I would say that there's few places in the world. It's like Asbury Park, New Orleans, maybe Nashville, that you can walk into a place like the Stone Pony and have no idea what's going to happen. You think you're seeing a band X and they had friends in town and they're going to come up for a song, or they're going to do something totally different. And that's the addiction that should be driving live music, but it's not always there. Yet in Asbury Park, it truly is there every night.
He wrote the book in 4 years, but lived the book his entire life. He thinks Warren Zevon needs to go in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame next, and wants you to read I Don't Want to Go Home, the oral history of the Stone Pony. Nick Corasaniti, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And that, my friends, is a Beyond Mike shortcut. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.